Immediately upon his defeat by Rudra, Feldway ordered Mai, who had been on standby in case of emergency, to return to their safe base, the Heavenly Star Palace. Without even changing out of his blood-stained robe, Feldway screamed out loud as his face contorted in humiliation. "Damn Rudra, quit messing around. What kind of a hero are you when you couldn't even protect Veldenava Summer?" These were the true feelings of Feldway, who was furious from the bottom of his heart. He had known that Rudra was strong, but he never thought he could be defeated while in possession of the castle guard. That's right, the breach of the invincible castle guard had been too unexpected even for Feldway. Even if he had not been of a cautious disposition, this would still be reason enough to choose to withdraw. That's why this was not something to be ashamed of. Feldway understood this. But he was still unable to control the anger welling up inside him. Although abhorrent, it's not as if it was a decisive defeat. By telling himself this, Feldway tried to regain his composure. Specifically, he temporarily ignored his own defeat and turned his attention to the war situation with the others. As a result, he was shocked by an unexpected turn of events. "Michael Summer, have you finished with Demon Lord Rimuru?" Demon Lord Rimuru was their biggest concern. So Feldway sent a thought to Michael directly, but there was no response. "What's going on?" Michael and Feldway were one and the same, sharing the same power. No matter how far apart they were, even if they existed in different dimensions, their shared will would never be severed. The only case where this would be possible was if one of them was in a critical situation where the other was unable to respond. Still, unlike Feldway, Michael was a parallel existence, so as long as a copy of himself remained, he could revive in any situation. Therefore, there should be no reason to panic. No, while there should be no reason to panic, the lack of response was still unusual. Since the stop time has been released, the battle should have been won by now. Demon Lord Rimuru should not even be aware of the suspended world. In other words, the plan should have been accomplished as soon as Leon was lured to the bait. And yet, a bad premonition was making Feldway's heart pound. And then, the message was delivered. "Ah, my wish has been granted. Feldway, my only regret is leaving you behind." This was the thought that Michael, who was on the verge of disappearing, sent to Feldway with the last of his strength. He could feel Michael's power inside him. However, Michael's will was no longer there. This was confirmation of Michael's death. It can't be. Michael Summer is a parallel existence, right? Whatever the situation, as long as I'm safe, it should be possible to revive him. Feldway was so distraught that he was unable to even try to mend the situation. Michael was the first friend he had made. Unlike Zalario and Fen, Michael was the first friend he had ever allowed himself to be open and honest with. The cautious Feldway had always prioritized Michael's security, taking a multitude of precautions until he felt absolutely sure that things were safe. And yet, there was no sign of Michael reviving. No, the ultimate skill Justice King Michael itself had not disappeared. And there was a sign that the Monus had come back. It would respond to questions, but there was no longer an ego. It was merely the power to control Justice King Michael in its pure form. It was a fundamentally different existence from Michael, Feldway's friend who wished to revive Veldenava of his own free will. Feldway had no choice but to admit that his friend had completely disappeared. Why, how did this happen? He asked these questions without thinking, but no one could answer them. Feldway was left stunned by this unbelievable event. Michael's last words reverberated in his mind. What did he mean by his wish had been granted? Feldway could not understand it at all. But he felt a little better knowing that Michael's death was not in pain, and that his life had had meaning. However, he could not help but feel jealous of Michael. How sly, to be satisfied with yourself and leave me behind, he thought to himself. Feldway was lonely. As the head of the 7 primordial angels, he was the leader of the group, and all the responsibilities fell upon his shoulders. All decisions were left to Feldway's will, without the possibility of consulting others. When Veldenava left, there was no way to escape the pressure. To everyone's dismay, Feldway remained at the forefront as a leader. It was inevitable that Feldway, who made all decisions on his own, would be out of step with his colleagues. Feldway's fault was that he did not care about what his colleagues thought. The accumulation of such a situation led to discord, and without Feldway realizing it, he gradually lost grip of the group. As a result, the group lost their cohesiveness. Whether it was fortunate or unfortunate, Feldway was unaware of this reality. Fen was also his friend, but he did not trust him enough to show his weakness. After all, there was no one, not even one person in the whole wide world, who could understand Feldway and heal his heart. Then Michael appeared. As a comrade with the same goal in mind, and as a friend who could understand the other, Michael fulfilled that empty part of Feldway. It was a joy he had never experienced before. Before long, Michael had become as important to Feldway as Veldenava. However, reality was cruel. The friend he had finally made disappeared, leaving Feldway behind. What do I? For the first time in his life, Feldway felt weak. Hey, General, quit your sulking and tell me what to do next. Though it was only for the blink of an eye. It's true that Feldway was stunned. However, it was Vega, who was well known for his lack of discretion, who called out to Feldway without consideration. There was another person there, my Foki, but she remained silent as usual and kept a quiet eye on the situation. Vega was the only one who seemed indifferent. Feldway was offended and looked at Vega. Shut up. We just lost contact with Michael Summer. You must understand that this is not the time for you, he spat out at Vega in a bid to silence him. However, Vega did not read the air. After all his bravado, that Michael guy still lost. How pathetic. And so on and so forth, he continued to speak. It was enough reason for Feldway to become furious. I am telling you to shut up, Feldway shouted, and then he launched an aggressive and vicious attack on Vega. This guy is amazing. The difference was like heaven and earth. Feldway and Vega were so far apart in strength that there was no way to bridge the gap. However, even after realizing this, Vega did not shut up. Hey, are you saying I'm wrong? Michael lost because he was weak. This is a world where might makes right, so there's no justice or crap if you die. Am I right? His words may have sounded like an incitement, but this was merely Vega's true feelings and principle of action. In a sense, it was a good argument and a truth. However, even so, Feldway could not nod his head in agreement. Don't you dare talk about Michael Summer like that. He tried to silence Vega by punching him, as if to counteract those words. But Vega still did not shut up. What the hell are you talking about? Look. You didn't give a shit when that bastard Cornu died, and you didn't even care when I ate Aurea and Arios, right? Come on, that's because you thought I was right, isn't it? Am I wrong? He was right. Feldway had not been saddened by Cornu's death. More than that, he had been displeased with the failure of the mission, and was busy thinking of the next best course of action. This was the same attitude he had toward his old colleagues. Aurea and Arios, who he considered as nothing more than pawns, were nothing more than insignificant beings. When he learned that Vega had eaten them, all he felt was a mechanical impression that it was not a waste if it had led to Vega's growth. Therefore, he had not blamed Vega, and in fact, he even thought that it served to strengthen their military force. Impudent loudmouth. That's just my nature. Feldway was slightly upset that his feelings had been detected. He further intensified his pressure on Vega so that he would not be aware of it. What would you know? I pursue a higher purpose, and in order to achieve it, I will sacrifice anything. Resisting Feldway, Vega shouted and interrupted his words. Shut up, don't be so naive. Under the intense pressure that compressed the space, it should have been impossible to resist. Yet even so, Vega furiously insisted. Besides, it's common knowledge that the world is a cruel place. Vega had survived under a harsh environment. Therefore, his words carried weight. Feldway involuntarily became silent, allowing Vega to speak. My boss, Yuki, was trying to resist all that absurdity. Well, looking back on it now, I wonder how he could have done it with such a small amount of strength. But even so, I believed in that person. I was ready to take his head if he showed any weakness, but Yuki had a tricky character, he never let his guard down. And sure enough, he pretended to be manipulated, didn't he? So what? That Yuki is no longer of this world, either. Yes, that's right. Even Yuki couldn't do it. In the face of such an insurmountable gap in strength, no matter how idealistic or righteous one may be, it's all meaningless. It was true that he had wanted to make fun of Yuki when he heard about him being manipulated. However, Vega had sensed a dangerous feeling from Yuki in his heart. He thought it could have been a habit acquired throughout his life, but it seems that he had instinctively realized that Yuki was not being manipulated. He was glad that he did not get carried away with Yuki, and when he learned that Yuki was killed by Jahil, he lamented the impermanence of the world. That is why Vega told Feldway, a world where everyone can live happily ever after is just an illusion, after all. That's why there's no choice but to be honest, right? Honest, you say? That's right. As long as the immutable truth that might makes right remains unchanged, the only right thing to do is to stand at the top. Vega reaffirmed that power was justice. No matter how beautiful an idea was, it was meaningless if it could not be realized. Conversely, as long as the idea could be realized, anything was allowed. In short, all that mattered was that you don't lose. No matter how vicious an act was, it would be justified as long as you were not defeated. No matter how cowardly you were, you would win as long as you survived to the end. That was Vega's way of life. From that perspective, a defeated Michael was worthless. It was difficult to understand how Feldway, who was much stronger than himself, would mourn for a loser. You are strong, General. Even Jahil, who defeated Yuki, is no match for you. That Velzad woman is also a monster, but I think you're better than her. Of course, you're better than that Michael guy. That's why, from now on, you're the boss. No one's going to have a problem with that. Feldway was strong, so it was a natural conclusion, as Vega asserted this without hesitation. You are a simple man, Feldway said. Cut out the flattery, I'm embarrassed. I didn't mean it as a compliment, Feldway sighed. At the same time, however, he realized that his grief over the loss of Michael was fading. Perhaps that was Vega's way of consoling him, he suddenly realized. Power. Certainly, there is little to lose in that regard. Although he had lost Michael, the power had returned to Feldway. There was a little loss, but that was because Michael had summoned the last of his strength to entrust it to Feldway. It was proof that Feldway's friend cared for him. If so, he could not let it go to waste. It may be wrong to intentionally take away the power of a comrade like Vega did, but the result was still the same. Feldway did not intend to blame Vega, and now, Feldway even felt a sense of kinship with Vega. Very well. From now on I will be king in place of Michael Summer. I swear to you that I will defend the throne until Veldenava Summer is restored. Now that he had made up his mind, the only thing left to do was to act. Feldway had always been submissive to Michael. Because of that, he had kept his true body hidden in order to keep a low profile, but now there was no longer any reason for him to hold back. In order to fully utilize the power Michael had left him, it was now time to unleash everything and dwell in the main body he had hidden in the other world. It's been a long time since I revealed my true self. Feldway, the first servant created by Veldenava, was very much like his creator. In contrast to Veldenava's long, jet-black hair that seemed to hold the radiance of the stars of the world itself, Feldway had long, silvery white hair that represented a shining light. His slitted eyes were cool, shimmering like blue stars. Rather than calling them beautiful, it would be more correct to call them divine. And in those eyes, there was a will of steel filled with determination. It almost seemed like a lie to say that he had once looked like a fake doll. The gender could still be seen as either male or female, but that is because he was too beautiful. As befitting of his beauty, he had a tremendous presence. All the powers that Michael had gathered belonged to Feldway. Under the control of Monus Michael, there were 4 angelic ultimate skills excluding the 3. Knowledge King Raphael, Covenant King Uriel, and Hope King Sariel. The related powers associated with the skills were also still alive and well in the form of information. In addition, the factors of Velzad and Vielgrind, 2 true dragons, had become flesh and blood. In terms of strength, Feldway was now more substantial than ever before. Amazing, really, he's a monster. Vega swallowed and muttered to himself, his true thoughts leaking out unintentionally. Feldway was radiating such a powerful energy. He was no longer the same person as before. Vega, you have woken me up. I thank you. It's okay. Vega smiled, a little embarrassed, but he quickly made up for it and added a few more words with his usual sulky expression. But don't forget. I'm always aiming for you. I'm no match for you now, so I'll follow you. But if you show any weakness, I'll eat you. Undoubtedly, this was Vega's true intention, even if he was trying to hide his embarrassment. Even though he understood this, Feldway nodded his head happily. I'm counting on you. Feldway smiled with a chilling atmosphere that was completely different from before.